If everything goes well with the launch of NASA's Artemis 1 mission, it will be a significant step towards humanity's return to the moon. Unfortunately, although getting back to the moon is easier than it seems, 2 launches in a week were called off because of technical problems. This means that the uncrewed test flight will not happen until the fall. 6 weeks after Artemis 1 goes into space, Orion will orbit the moon and return to Earth to show that it can safely carry people on deep space missions. The Artemis mission, a continuation of the groundbreaking Apollo mission that landed people on the moon for the first time in 1969, takes its name from the Greek moon goddess Artemis. On August 3rd, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson told reporters that the agency's Artemis program will usher in a new era of lunar exploration and allow humanity to go further into space than ever before. While we develop the technology to send the first humans to Mars, NASA will put the first woman and the first person of color on the moon. During this time, astronauts will live and work in deep space. Future human space travelers may experience the full array of medical examinations on board Artemis 1 to get a sense of the toll space travel will have on their bodies. It takes 42 days to get around the moon and return. The Orion spacecraft will be launched into lunar orbit by NASA's Space Launch System as part of the space agency's moon exploration mission. The rocket's superior strength makes it the largest and most powerful structure of its type. When the time is right, the Orion spacecraft will break away from the rocket and keep going to the moon. The SLS interim cryogenic propulsion stage will supply the thrust necessary to send Orion to the moon. Orion will be propelled 170,000 kilometers from Earth via translunar injection. If all the system checks go as planned, Orion will be placed in an orbit that will bring it within 62 miles of the moon's surface. The Orion spacecraft will use the moon to travel to a depth never before reached by a human-rated spacecraft, about 40,000 miles from the moon. Orion will be the furthest artificial object to ever travel through space because it will take a slightly different route around the moon than Apollo 13, which went further into space than any other Apollo mission. The crew of the detached spaceship had to fire the engines repeatedly to get back to Earth. Orion must prove it can finish its mission and return in one piece. It will re-enter the atmosphere at a speed 32 times that of sound, making its re-entry hotter and more rapid than any spacecraft in history. The spaceship is protected from the sun's radiation by a massive and highly sophisticated heat shield. The ultimate test of Orion's abilities will be for it to splash down in the Pacific and be found. Only 3 humanoid robots, not actual humans, will travel on board Artemis 1. NASA said that while in charge, one of the robots will wear a spacesuit developed for future Artemis explorers. Besides a radiation detector, it will also include an accelerometer and a gyroscope to gather data on acceleration and rotation. Scientists need accurate information about this topic because Orion will be exposed to more radiation than astronauts on the International Space Station once it leaves the safe boundaries of Earth's magnetic field. Since radiation is one of the main hurdles for human travel beyond Earth, research into the radiation environment on and around the moon has been given top priority. Men and women experience radiation in different ways. Therefore, Helga and Zohar, 2 female torso mannequins that will be part of the mission on board, will be added to the male-bodied moonkin called Campos. They'll be given a radiation vest to wear throughout the experiment as part of research on the effects of cosmic rays on human health. Artemis 1 will include a little stuffed Snoopy as a zero-gravity indicator for its dummy crew. To use a phrase from NASA, spacecraft like the Orion use these visual cues to tell if they have reached the weightlessness of microgravity. Some space research flights carry equipment for low-stakes testing to lay the groundwork for the potential deployment of a specialized instrument on future missions. The SLS will send 10 satellites the size of shoeboxes called CubeSats into orbit so scientists can learn more. The CubeSats chosen for the Artemis 1 mission are focused on lunar science to help improve technology for exploring the moon by humans and robots. The mission also presents a once-in-a-lifetime chance to send experiments into deep space, where they can be used to do things like test out novel methods of propulsion, elucidate the nature of space weather, investigate the effects of radiation on living things, and capture breathtaking images of Earth and the moon. The Greek mythological figure Callisto, Artemis's hunting partner, inspired the name of the technological display aboard the Orion starship. Callisto is an effort funded by NASA and created by tech giants Lockheed Martin, Amazon, and Cisco to bring voice-activated virtual assistants like Alexa to spaceflight. We don't know whether the Artemis 1 mission will be successful or for how long. There may be a sense of wonder and anticipation among NASA staff and space fans in the days running up to the launch. And what exactly do the advances of the last half-century entail? To beat the Soviet Union to the moon was Kennedy's principal reason for kicking up the Apollo space program. However, the government recognized that the aim of putting a man on the moon would put the United States at the forefront of this space race and accelerate technological progress. The moon landing by the United States all but eliminated any remaining competition. At the time, defeating the Russians was and always has been the first priority. The USA also did a lot of scientific experiments and flag planting. After several more flights after Apollo 11, Nixon called off the program because its political goals had been accomplished. Today, we've moved to a whole new setting. When it comes to deep space travel beyond Earth's orbit, we're in a race against ourselves, not the Russians or the Chinese. The Artemis project was motivated by several different aims. In situ processing of water, ice, and lunar soil, for example, could make food and building materials. SpaceX plays a pivotal part in the emerging lunar and space economies that this project is fostering. The space agency is just paying to ride the Starship, not to claim control of it. After that, Starship will be used to ferry supplies, private astronauts, and multinational crews to space. After Artemis 1, there's even more future. Artemis's mission is there for anybody who's ever gazed at the moon and wished that humans might return to walk on its surface. Artemis 2 will be a first for the Artemis program. People will go to a place in space that has never been visited before. An SLS rocket will carry a crew of 4 to within 7,402 kilometers of the moon's far side, where they will conduct a lunar flyby before returning to Earth. Throughout the 8 to 10-day journey, scientists will gather information on their first flight tests. The launch of Artemis 2 will usher in the era of human space exploration. This one, like Apollo 8, will make a complete orbit of the moon before heading back to Earth. Human crew equipment testing may be optimized with longer stays in lunar orbit. Artemis 3 will follow. Since Apollo 17 in 1972, no one has set foot on the moon. That will change in the coming third lunar mission, with the Artemis 2 mission continuing. 4 astronauts will spend 30 days in orbit aboard the Orion module before docking at the Lunar Gateway. Then, with the help of the human landing mechanism, 2 explorers will go to the moon's south pole. The astronauts will spend their whole week on the moon doing scientific studies, one of which involves studying a sample of the water ice initially found in 1971. The crew of Artemis 3 will then transfer to the SpaceX Starship, which will go on a journey to the lunar surface somewhere in the middle of this decade. While the lunar spaceship transports the astronauts to the lunar surface, the Orion spacecraft will stay in orbit. The mission's main goal is to look for water ice in an unexplored part of the moon's south pole. And what about Artemis's long-term future? NASA just gave out contracts for boosters that will go on rockets up to Artemis 13. This shows that Artemis 1 through 3 missions are now the agency's top priority, but the agency is also looking forward to future projects. If the first 3 are successful trips, NASA plans to continue sending humans into space annually. Astronauts might build a colony in the far future as a stopover on their way to Mars. The solid rocket booster for Artemis 4 is now being cast and constructed, and NASA hopes to make the news public in 2023. On the other hand, in June of 2022, Airbus revealed that they had purchased the module structure essential for humans to reside in lunar orbit in preparation for the 4th Artemis mission. Would you travel to the dark side of the moon with Artemis?